At 39 years old, Marcus Holloway, a man whose hands were more familiar with Carnauba wax than stock portfolios, learned his net worth. It was $40. He earned an honest $48,000 a year as a master auto detailer, a craft he considered a form of sculpture. But on a Tuesday morning at 6:12 a.m., the entire architecture of his life, a life he had co-authored with his wife Brianna, was demolished, and his share of the rubble was 2 crisp $20 bills. The discovery began not with a bang, but with the cold, silent glow of his iPhone 11 screen. He'd woken with a familiar unease, a low hum of anxiety that had been his constant companion for months. The space beside him in the king-sized bed was cold, but that wasn't unusual. Brianna often left for early meetings, slipping out of their $450,000 Ballantine home before the sun had a chance to spill across the manicured lawn. He reached for his phone on the $800 mahogany nightstand, his thumb hovering over the Bank of America app. He just wanted to check if a small, $150 payment for a side detailing job had cleared. The app opened, checking $40. He blinked. That couldn't be right. There should have been at least $600 in there. He squinted, the sleep still clinging to his eyes. Maybe it was a glitch. He swiped over to the joint savings account, the one they called their future fund. It held the sum of 10 years of disciplined saving, of skipped vacations and careful budgeting, at least on his part. It was their dream of a bigger house, maybe a business of his own one day. Joint savings. $0. A void. A perfect digital zero where $74,382.15 had been just yesterday. A cold dread, sharp and metallic, flooded his chest. It wasn't a glitch. This was an action. This was a choice someone had made. He threw back the $400 Egyptian cotton duvet and stood up, the polished hardwood floor cold beneath his bare feet. The house was too quiet. Not the peaceful quiet of an early morning, but the hollow, echoing silence of a space that has been emptied. He walked into the master bathroom, a sprawling space of marble and glass they'd spent $30,000 renovating. His heart hammered against his ribs. And there it was, stuck to the center of the vast, ornate mirror, a single, yellow, sticky note. The kind Brianna used to leave reminders for herself written in her perfect looping script. This one was for him. 5 words. This is your share, B. He stared at the note, the cheerful yellow, a sickening contrast to the black ink. His share. He slowly pulled out his wallet from the jeans he'd worn yesterday, slung over a $250 valet stand. He opened it. Tucked neatly behind his driver's license were 2 $20 bills. They were unnaturally crisp, as if they'd come directly from an ATM. She hadn't just cleaned him out. She had performed a final, surgical act of humiliation. She had calculated his worth, signed off on it, and left it for him to find like a tip for a service rendered. The $58,000 Mercedes-Benz GLC 300 was gone from the garage. Her closet, a curated gallery of designer labels worth more than his annual salary, was bare. All that remained of his 10-year marriage was a meaningless piece of paper and the exact amount of cash she believed he deserved, $40. What does a man do when his life is foreclosed on before breakfast? Do you scream? Do you cry? Do you smash the expensive mirror that reflects your own pathetic, stunned face? Marcus did none of those things. He simply folded the sticky note, tucked it into his pocket alongside the 220s, and felt a strange, terrifying calm settle over him. He had no idea what was coming, but he knew one thing with bone-deep certainty. This was not the end of his story. It was just the end of a chapter written in someone else's expensive ink. And he was about to start a new one, written in his own hand. Have you ever felt a betrayal so complete it actually brings you a moment of clarity? For Marcus, that clarity was cold, hard, and worth exactly $40. Let us know in the comments if you've ever had a moment that changed everything. The facade of their life had been beautiful, meticulously constructed, and expertly lit. From the outside, they were a portrait of modern black success in Charlotte. Brianna, with her luminous, deep brown skin and a law degree she'd leveraged into a $180,000 a year marketing executive position. Marcus, with his steady hands, his warm, easy smile, and a quiet strength that people found reassuring. Their home in the affluent Ballantine neighborhood was a testament to Brianna's ambition. It was a 3,200 square foot brick front colonial with a two-car garage and a backyard that backed onto a small man-made pond. The mortgage was a staggering $2,800 a month, a number that always made Marcus's stomach clench. Brianna curated their life like it was a marketing campaign. Every piece of furniture had a purpose and a price tag. The living room featured a $6,000 sectional from Restoration Hardware, a $1,500 Persian rug, and a media console that housed a 75-inch Samsung frame TV that cost $3,000. When it was off, it displayed art. Brianna loved that detail. "It elevates the space, don't you think?" she'd say to guests, while Marcus thought about how many cars he'd have to polish to pay for a television that pretended to be a painting. Her world was one of brands and status. She carried a $1,200 Louis Vuitton Neverfull tote to work and wore $900 Christian Louboutin heels that she complained pinched her feet. Her closet was a sea of fabrics and names. A $2,400 Burberry trench coat for the mild Charlotte winters, a rack of Diane von Furstenberg wrap dresses at $500 apiece, and a collection of jeans from brands like Frame and AG that cost upwards of $250 a pair. Marcus's world was different. His most prized possessions were tools. A set of German-made polishing pads that cost $300, a Flex cordless polisher that ran him $550 and felt like an extension of his own arm. His daily uniform consisted of $40 Carhartt t-shirts and a pair of $150 Red Wing boots he'd had for 5 years, the leather worn to a soft, comfortable patina. He drove a 2010 Honda Accord with 187,000 miles on it. Its black paint job maintained to a mirror shine that defied its age. He did it himself every Sunday in their garage. That garage was his sanctuary and, in retrospect, the primary source of their disconnect. While Brianna was networking at rooftop bars in Uptown, sipping $18 cocktails, Marcus was in the garage, experimenting. He wasn't just washing cars, he was a student of chemistry and light, obsessed with the science of surface protection. For years, he'd been working on his own ceramic coating formula. It was a complex blend of polymers and silicon dioxide that he believed could create a harder, more durable, and more hydrophobic layer than anything on the market. His notebooks, filled with chemical equations and test results, were his most valuable assets, though Brianna saw them as little more than a hobby. "Are you coming inside anytime soon?" she'd ask, standing at the door that led from the kitchen to the garage, her arms crossed. She'd be dressed for an evening, out in a sleek $600 dress, the scent of her $350 Tom Ford perfume filling the air, mingling unpleasantly with the chemical smell of his polishes. "Almost done, B," he'd say, holding up a small black panel he was using for testing. "Look at the gloss on this. The water just sheets right off. I think I finally got the silica concentration right." She would offer a tight, tired smile. "That's great, honey. It's a car wash. Can't you just leave it at work?" It wasn't a car wash. It was his art. It was his passion. And he thought naively that it could be their future. He'd tried to explain it to her over one of the expensive dinners she insisted on, at a steakhouse where the bill routinely topped $400. "Imagine, B," he said, his voice full of excitement. "If I can perfect this, I can patent it. We could license it to other detailers, even big companies. This could be huge. This could be our ticket out of you having to work so hard, me working for a boss." Brianna delicately cut a piece of her $65 filet mignon. She looked at him over the rim of her $22 glass of Cabernet. "Marcus, that's sweet. But it's a car polish. My sister is opening a chain of actual car washes. That's a business. This," she said, gesturing vaguely toward him, "is a hobby. Let's be realistic. We have a good life. Don't go chasing pipe dreams." The comment about her sister Kendra was a deliberate jab. He knew it. The good life she spoke of felt increasingly like her life, and he was just a resident. He paid his half of the mortgage, his half of the utilities, and contributed thousands to the Future Fund from his detailing business, which brought in a respectable $48,000 a year. But his contributions were dwarfed by her salary, a fact she never let him forget. The power dynamic was as clear and hard as the diamond in her $15,000 engagement ring. He was the simple, reliable man who kept the house running and the cars clean. She was the star, the one ascending, and he felt more and more like dead weight she was graciously towing along. He had no idea how wrong he was. She wasn't towing him. She was preparing to cut the line. The betrayal wasn't a single act, but a campaign of 1,000 cuts, an escalating series of dismissals and cruelties that hollowed out their marriage long before she emptied their bank account. The accumulation of outrage began subtly, then accelerated, with a terrifying momentum. It started in earnest when her sister Kendra became a permanent fixture in their lives. Kendra was Brianna, but amplified, sharper, louder, and with an undisguised contempt for Marcus. She was launching a chain of upscale car washes called Gleam Queen, funded by a recent divorce settlement that had left her with nearly $500,000. She saw Marcus not as a brother-in-law, but as a quaint blue-collar accessory her sister had inexplicably acquired. One Saturday afternoon, Kendra swept into their house unannounced, all sharp angles in a $1,500 power suit, her voice booming. Marcus was in the garage, meticulously applying a test batch of his formula to a spare hood panel. Kendra followed Brianna in, her $800 heels clicking on the concrete floor. "This is where the magic happens," Kendra said, a smirk playing on her lips. She peered at his workbench, covered in beakers, scales, and notebooks. "What's all this chicken scratch, Marcus? Trying to invent a new kind of soap?" Marcus felt a familiar flush of anger and embarrassment. "It's a ceramic coating formula," he said, his voice tight. "It's a long-chain polymer that bonds to the clear coat." Kendra laughed, a short, sharp bark. "A poly what? Oh, that's adorable. Bree, your husband is a little scientist." She picked up one of his notebooks, flipping through the pages of complex chemical notations. "Cute." He looked at Brianna, expecting her to defend him, to tell her sister to show some respect. Instead, Brianna just smiled weakly and put a hand on Kendra's arm. "Leave him be, Ken. He likes to tinker. It keeps him busy." Keeps him busy, like a child with a chemistry set. The words landed like stones in his gut. In that moment, he wasn't her partner, he was her pet project, a harmless eccentric whose hobbies were to be tolerated, not respected. That evening, the sisters sat at the $4,000 granite kitchen island, their voices low but clear. They were talking about Gleam Queen. "The key is the premium package," Kendra said, swirling a glass of wine. "We need a signature product, something that sounds high-tech. Diamond shield or crystal guard. Something that justifies a $250 price tag." You'll figure it out, Brianna said. You always do. A few weeks later, Brianna approached him with a proposal. She sat next to him on the expensive sectional, her demeanor unusually gentle. Honey, she began, Kendra's having a little trouble securing her final round of funding. The bank wants to see more capital from her. Marcus braced himself. Okay? We have that money in the future fund, she said, her voice smooth as silk. The $74,000. If we were to invest it in Gleam Queen, Kendra could offer us a small stake in the company. She thinks it could be worth millions in a few years. This could be it, Marcus. The thing that sets us up for life. He stared at her. B, that's everything we have. That money is for a down payment on a bigger house. For our kids one day. It's our safety net. Her gentle expression hardened instantly. A safety net? Marcus, I make almost $200,000 a year. We don't need a safety net. What we need is to be smart. My sister is building an empire, and you're worried about a safety net? You're content making $50,000 a year, polishing hubcaps for the rest of your life, but I'm not. Don't you dare hold me back. It's not about holding you back, he argued, his voice rising. It's my money too. My name is on that account. And I'm not gambling our entire life savings on your sister's business. The argument escalated into the worst fight of their marriage. It ended with her screaming, her face contorted with a rage he'd never seen before. Fine. Stay small, Marcus. Stay in your garage with your little potions, but don't expect me to stay there with you. She slept in the guest room for a week. The chill in the house was arctic. It was during that week that a seed of deep, primal fear took root in Marcus's mind. He saw the way she looked at him, with a mixture of pity and disgust. He realized he couldn't trust her, not with his passion, not with his dreams, and certainly not with their shared future. On a Thursday afternoon, he took a half-day off from work. He went to a small law office in a less glamorous part of Charlotte. He met with a patent attorney, a kind man named Mr. Davies, who charged a flat fee of $5,000 to file a provisional patent application. Marcus used money he had saved from side jobs, cash Brianna didn't know about. He laid out his notebooks, explained the unique chemistry of his formula, the specific ratio of polysilazane and titanium dioxide that gave it its unparalleled hardness and hydrophobic properties. Mr. Davies was impressed. This is solid, Mr. Holloway, the lawyer said, peering at the data. Very marketable. Marcus named it Aegis, the mythical shield of the gods. It was his shield, his only defense against a storm he felt was coming. He walked out of that office feeling a sliver of control for the first time in months. He told Brianna nothing. The final, unforgivable insult came 2 weeks later, a week before she vanished. They were at a charity gala for Brianna's company, held in a glittering ballroom at the Westin Charlotte. He felt out of place in his rented $200 tuxedo, a stark contrast to Brianna, who was breathtaking in an $8,700 Armani gown that shimmered under the chandeliers. He was standing with a group of her colleagues, all men in expensive suits, who talked about stock options and mergers. One of them, a vice president named Richard, turned to him. So, Marcus, Brianna tells us you're in the automotive industry. Before Marcus could even open his mouth to explain his craft, Brianna let out a light, tinkling laugh that set his teeth on edge. Oh, Richard, you make it sound so grand, she said, waving a dismissive hand. Marcus plays with sponges and soap for a living. It's his little passion project. It's adorable, really. The men chuckled politely. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. He was a ghost at his own wife's side, a punchline to a joke he wasn't in on. He saw the pity in their eyes. And it was worse than any insult. He said nothing for the rest of the night. In the car on the way home, a tense silence filled the cabin of her Mercedes. He was driving. He hated driving her car. It felt like he was borrowing a life that wasn't his. "Why did you do that, Brianna?" he finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Do what?" she asked, scrolling through photos from the event on her phone. "Belittle me in front of your friends? Plays with sponges and soap?" She sighed, a long, exasperated sound. "Oh, Marcus, don't be so sensitive. It was a joke." What was I supposed to say? My husband is a glorified car washer who thinks he's a chemist? She didn't wait for an answer. She looked out the window at the passing mansions of South Park. Then she said the words that would echo in his mind for years. "You know, sometimes I look at our life, at everything I've built, and I feel like your contribution is worth about $40 to my bottom line." He didn't respond. He just gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. He had no idea she was being so literal. A week later, he would find out exactly what she meant. The cruelty wasn't random. It was calculated. It was the price she had put on his head. The morning light on Tuesday, November 14th, was thin and gray, filtering through the expensive Hunter Douglas blinds. It was 6:12 a.m. The numbers on his phone screen were stark and unforgiving. Checking, $40. Joint savings, $0. The initial shock was giving way to a cold, creeping horror that started in his stomach and spread through his limbs, making them feel heavy and useless. He pushed himself off the edge of the bed, the mattress no longer holding the faint impression of her body. The silence in the 3,200 square foot house was a physical presence. It pressed in on him. He walked out of the bedroom and into the hallway. The first stop was her home office. The sleek $2,000 glass-top desk was clear. Her laptop was gone. The docking station was empty. A framed photo of them from their wedding day, a day he remembered as being full of sunlight and hope, was lying face down on the bookshelf. He didn't have the courage to turn it over. Next, the closet. It was a massive walk-in that they had customized for $10,000, with built-in shelving and cedar-lined drawers. His side was neat, a row of identical work shirts, a few pairs of jeans, 2 suits for weddings and funerals. Her side was a cavern. Hangers, dozens of them, were empty, clustered together like skeletons. The shelves where her collection of designer handbags used to sit, the Gucci, the Prada, the Chanel flat bag he'd spent $5,000 on for their 5th anniversary, were bare. The shoe racks, once a vibrant display of color and leather, held nothing but dust. She had taken everything, not just her things, but things he had given her, things that were supposed to be symbols of their shared life. The jewelry box on her dresser was open and empty. The $15,000 engagement ring was gone. The diamond earrings he'd bought her after his mother passed away using a small inheritance were gone. It was a systematic erasure. He walked back into the master bathroom, the scene of the initial discovery. The yellow sticky note was still there, a tiny flag of malice on the vast mirror. "This is your share, B." He reached out and peeled it from the glass. The adhesive made a small, ripping sound. He turned the note over and over in his fingers. It was so casual, so dismissive, as if she were leaving a note for the cleaner. He looked at his own reflection. A 39-year-old man with deep brown skin that looked ashen under the fluorescent lights. His locks, which he usually kept meticulously twisted, felt disheveled. His eyes were wide with a grief so profound it hadn't yet found an exit. There were no tears. It was too deep for tears. This was a seismic event, a tectonic shift in the landscape of his reality. The final confirmation was the garage. He pressed the button on the wall, and the door groaned open, revealing the empty space where her white 2022 Mercedes-Benz GLC 300 should have been. The $58,000 car was gone. His own 2010 Honda Accord sat in its usual spot, looking humble and old. On the passenger seat of his car, he saw an envelope. His heart leaped for a second. An explanation? An apology? He opened the car door and picked it up. It was a standard business envelope from a law firm. Inside was a single, cold, legal document. A notice. Since the house was solely in her name, a decision she had pushed for, claiming it would secure them a better mortgage rate from a special program at her bank, he was being formally notified that his residency was terminated. He had 30 days to vacate the premises. The finality of it was absolute. She hadn't just left him. She had evicted him. She hadn't just taken their money. She had left him with an insulting pittance and a deadline for his own homelessness. Outside, a light drizzle began to fall, the drops streaking down the garage door window. Rain on a day of profound loss. It felt like a cliché, but his life had suddenly become one. He walked back into the silent house, the legal notice in one hand and the sticky note in the other. He went to his wallet and confirmed the 2 crisp 20s were there. $40. He remembered her voice in the car, dripping with contempt. "Your contribution is worth about $40 to my bottom line." It wasn't an insult. It was a business transaction. She had closed their joint venture and paid out his equity. He sat on the edge of the unmade bed in the silent, empty house. A man with $40, a 10-year-old car, and a 30-day eviction notice. The scale of the betrayal was so immense, so complete, that it bypassed rage and went straight to a place of utter stillness. He felt nothing. It was the blank, terrifying peace of a battlefield after the battle is over. The fighting was done. Now came the survival. And after survival, he promised himself in that hollowed-out moment, would come the accounting. The world doesn't stop for a broken heart, and it certainly doesn't stop for an empty bank account. The first few weeks were a blur of humiliation and logistics. He called the bank a futile exercise in formality. The teller on the phone, a woman with a tired voice, confirmed the transfer. A wire withdrawal of $74,382.15 had been made from their joint savings account 2 days prior. Because Brianna was a primary account holder, the action was perfectly legal. There was nothing they could do. "Is there anything else I can help you with today, Mr. Holloway?" she asked, the script a brutal counterpoint to his reality. "No," he said, hanging up the phone. "There isn't." He called a few friends, testing the waters. The story he gave was a carefully edited version of the truth. "Bree and I split up," he'd say, forcing a casual tone. "We just grew apart. It's for the best." He couldn't bring himself to tell them the truth, to admit the sheer gutting totality of his ruin. Their sympathy was well-meaning, but felt like sandpaper on his raw nerves. "Oh man, I'm so sorry. Let me know if you need anything." What could he say? "Can I borrow my life back?" The 30-day eviction notice was a ticking clock. He spent his days packing his life into cardboard boxes sourced from behind a grocery store. It was a pathetic inventory. His clothes, his tools, the books his mother had left him, a few old photos. Everything fit into the trunk and back seat of his Honda. The life he had shared with Brianna, the one with the $6,000 sofa and the $3,000 television, was not his to take. He was an expatriate from his own life. On the final day, he did one last walkthrough. The house was pristine, empty, waiting for its next chapter. He left his key on the granite countertop where they used to drink coffee, next to the spot where the $400 Nespresso machine had been. As he closed the door for the last time, he didn't look back. He found a studio apartment on the west side of Charlotte, in a neighborhood of low-slung brick buildings and chain-link fences. It was a world away from the manicured lawns of Ballantyne. The rent was $850 a month. The apartment was tiny, a single room with a kitchenette and a bathroom where the shower had questionable water pressure. But it was his. The first month's rent and security deposit took almost half of the money he had left. His only source of immediate cash was his car. He sold the 2010 Honda Accord, his meticulously maintained pride and joy, to a college kid for $4,000. It felt like selling a part of himself, but sentiment was a luxury he could no longer afford. With the sale of his car, he was a detailer without a vehicle, a craftsman without a canvas. He took a job at a generic high-volume car wash off Independence Boulevard. The pay was $10 an hour plus tips. His boss was a kid half his age who called him Chief. His co-workers were transient and uninspired. He went from being a master of his craft to a guy in a blue jumpsuit operating a high-pressure spray wand. He washed hundreds of cars a day, his hands raw from the cheap caustic soap. He saw cars like Brianna's Mercedes roll through, their owners tapping impatiently on their phones, never making eye contact. Each one was a small, sharp jab. He was playing a role, the defeated man. The world saw a 39-year-old whose life had imploded, forced to start over at the very bottom. His family worried. His friends pitied him. No one knew what happened after his shift ended at 7 p.m. He would take the city bus back to his small apartment, the ride costing $2.20 each way. He'd eat a simple meal, rice and beans or a sandwich. Then his real work would begin. On a small, wobbly $40 desk he'd bought at a thrift store, under the sterile white light of a single $15 LED lamp, he would open his notebooks. The patent for Aegis had been filed, but the formula wasn't finished. It needed refinement, scaling, a path to production. This was his secret life. While the world thought he was broken, he was building. He used the meager cash from his tips to buy small, precise quantities of chemicals online: tetraethyl orthosilicate, isopropanol, titanium dioxide nanoparticles. His tiny kitchenette, with its stained countertop and two-burner stove, became his laboratory. He worked with a meticulous, monk-like focus. The rage, the grief, the humiliation. He channeled all of it into the work. It became a fuel, hot and clean. He wasn't just mixing chemicals. He was transmuting his pain into progress. He was playing dumb to the world, letting them see the ashes of his old life, while in secret, he was tending to the ember of his new one. He had no idea how brightly that ember was about to burn. 3 years is a long time. It's long enough for a wound to scar over, for grief to transmute into something harder, something more useful. For Marcus, those 3 years were a crucible. He worked at the car wash for 18 months, saving every dollar he could, living a life of monastic simplicity. His expenses were minimal. The $850 rent, $50 for a bus pass, $200 for groceries. The rest went into 2 places: a savings account and his research. By the end of the 2nd year, he had saved $12,000. More importantly, his provisional patent for Aegis had been converted into a full, granted utility patent from the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Patent number 11,245,817. It was his deed to the future. He quit the car wash and started a small mobile detailing business using a beat-up 2005 Ford Econoline van he bought for $3,000. He built a reputation the old-fashioned way, through word of mouth and obsessive quality. He specialized in paint correction and ceramic coatings, using his own perfected Aegis formula. He charged a premium and clients were happy to pay it. His business grew steadily, but he never forgot. The yellow sticky note was taped to the wall above his desk. "This is your share." It was his mission statement. He knew he needed help for the next phase. He found Imani Vance through a local black business directory. She was a lawyer in her early 30s, sharp, hungry, and with a reputation for being a bulldog in litigation. Her office was in a modest but professional building in University City. a far cry from the glass towers of Uptown. She billed at $450 an hour, a rate that made Marcus's hands sweat, but he knew he couldn't do this alone. He sat across from her in her conference room, the patent document laid out on the table between them. He told her everything: the 10-year marriage, the $74,000, the sticky note, the eviction. He spoke calmly, without emotion, laying out the facts like an auditor. Imani, a striking black woman with her hair in elegant sister locks, listened without interruption, her expression unreadable. When he finished, he pushed another folder across the table. This is her sister's company, Gleam Queen Car Wash. Imani opened it. Inside were printouts from the Gleam Queen website, news articles about its rapid expansion, and a list of its 12 locations across North and South Carolina. Their premium service was called the Diamond Shield, and it cost customers $250. The marketing copy was full of buzzwords: nanotechnology, molecular bonding, unparalleled gloss, and protection. I had a hunch, Marcus said, his voice low. The timing was too perfect. Brianna asks for our savings for Kendra's business. I say no. And a week later, she leaves with the money anyway. 2 months after that, Gleam Queen launches with a revolutionary new coating. He slid one more item across the table: a lab report. I paid a friend $100 to get the Diamond Shield service on his car. I took a sample from his fender carefully. I sent it to a materials analysis lab in Raleigh. It cost me $800. That's the report. Imani picked it up. She read through the chemical composition breakdown, her eyes scanning the percentages and compounds. She looked up at Marcus, and for the first time he saw a fire in her eyes. The formula described in this report, she said slowly, tapping the paper, is a 99.7% match to the proprietary formula described in your patent, Mr. Holloway. Marcus nodded. I know. A slow smile spread across Imani's face. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator that has just caught the scent of its prey. They didn't just steal your money, Marcus, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. They stole your intellectual property. They built their entire multi-million-dollar business on your genius, and they thought they could get away with it because they underestimated you. They thought I was just a car washer, Marcus said quietly. Exactly, Imani replied. And that is a mistake that is going to cost them everything. She leaned forward, her energy electric. We are not going to file a messy public lawsuit. Not yet. That's what they'd expect. We are going to be smarter. We are going to perform a licensing audit. It's quieter, faster. And for them, it will be infinitely more terrifying. We will hit them from their blind side. They spent the next 2 weeks planning. Imani's firm calculated the potential scale of the infringement. Based on Gleam Queen's own press releases boasting about their sales volume, they estimated the company had performed at least 40,000 Diamond Shield services over the past 3 years. At $250 a pop, that was $10 million in revenue generated directly from Marcus's stolen formula. A standard licensing fee would be between 15 to 20%. The back royalties owed were staggering. We will demand access to their supplier invoices and purchase orders, Imani explained, her voice crisp and clinical. They're buying the raw chemicals from somewhere. Once we have that, we have them. There will be no denying it. Marcus felt a grim satisfaction settle over him. This wasn't about revenge. He kept telling himself that. It was about accountability. It was about a debt being paid. It was about the cold, clean finality of a ledger being balanced. The strike was scheduled for Tuesday, May 21st, at precisely 10 a.m. It was a coordinated, multi-pronged assault, executed with the quiet precision of a special operation. Marcus sat in Imani's conference room, a cup of coffee untouched in front of him. He wasn't nervous. He was perfectly, unnaturally calm. He felt like he was watching a movie of his own life. At 10 a.m. sharp, a team of 3 forensic accountants, hired by Imani's firm and dressed in nondescript business suits, walked into the lobby of the gleaming glass tower in Ballantine that housed the corporate headquarters of Gleam Queen. They approached the receptionist, a young woman typing distractedly. The lead auditor, a stern-faced man named Mr. Chen, placed a thick envelope on the marble counter. "We are here to see Kendra DePaul," he said, his voice polite but firm. "We have a legal demand for a patent licensing audit." The receptionist's eyes widened. She stammered something into her headset. Moments later, Kendra burst out of a set of glass doors, her face a mask of annoyance. She was dressed in a vibrant red power dress, the picture of a confident CEO. "What is the meaning of this? Who are you?" "Mr." Chen didn't flinch. "I represent the legal interests of the holder of U.S. patent number 11,245,817. We have reason to believe your company is in violation of this patent. This document gives us the legal right to audit your supplier agreements, purchase orders, and chemical inventory records, effective immediately." Kendra snatched the envelope and tore it open. As she read the first page, the color drained from her face. Her confident posture sagged. The name on the patent, Marcus Holloway, leapt out at her. She saw the patent number, the chemical abstract. Her hands began to tremble, a slight tremor at first, then a visible shake. This is insane. It's harassment. "You can cooperate with the audit, or we can file an immediate injunction to cease all business operations and freeze your assets pending a federal lawsuit for willful infringement," Mr. Chen said calmly. "The choice is yours. Our team is prepared to begin now." Kendra fumbled for her phone, her fingers clumsy. She speed-dialed her lawyer, her voice a shrill whisper. "They're here. They know. What do I do?" Simultaneously, 20 miles away, a courier was delivering an identical package to Brianna's office. She was now a senior vice president at a different marketing firm, her career having soared. She was in a meeting, presenting a multi-million-dollar campaign proposal. Her phone buzzed on the table. It was an urgent email from her personal attorney. The subject line was urgent. Legal action. Marcus Holloway. She excused herself from the meeting, her heart suddenly pounding. She stepped into the hallway and opened the email. It contained a scanned copy of the letter. She read about the patent. She read the accusation of infringement against her sister's company. Then she got to the part that concerned her. It identified her as a person of material interest due to a significant and timely financial transaction that coincided with the founding of Gleam Queen. The letter detailed the $74,382.15 withdrawal from the joint account and a subsequent transfer of $70,000 to Gleam Queen LLC just 2 days later. The hallway seemed to tilt. The blood rushed from her head. She leaned against a wall, gasping for air. Marcus, quiet, simple, harmless Marcus. The man she had dismissed as a hobbyist, the man she had valued at $40. He had a patent, a real one, and he was coming for them. Back at the Gleam Queen headquarters, Kendra's lawyer had given her the bad news. The auditors had the right. She had no choice but to comply. She led them, defeated, to the accounting department. It didn't take them long. Buried in the digital purchase orders was the smoking gun. Massive, recurring orders for the exact precursor chemicals for the Aegis formula, purchased from an industrial supplier in Gastonia. The supplier's name was different, but the chemical codes were identical to those in Marcus's patent documentation. They had been buying it by the drum for 3 years. The evidence was irrefutable. Imani's phone rang in the conference room. It was Mr. Chen. "We've got it," he said. "Purchase orders, invoices, Shipping manifests. It's all here. It's a direct match. Imani looked at Marcus and gave him a slow, deliberate nod. Phase 1 complete, she said. Now we wait for them to break. They didn't have to wait long. Marcus's phone, which had been silent for 3 years, lit up. A call from Brianna. He looked at the screen, at her name, and felt a cold, satisfying wave of finality wash over him. He let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, another call. Kendra. He ignored that one too. The balance of power had shifted. The ledger was open on the table, and Marcus Holloway, the $40 man, was finally ready to make his entry. The collapse was not a single, dramatic explosion, but a cascade of failures, each one a direct consequence of a choice made 3 years prior. The downfall was methodical, financial, and utterly ruinous. Imani Vance orchestrated it with the dispassionate precision of a surgeon. First came the reckoning for Kendra and Gleam Queen. Faced with undeniable evidence of willful patent infringement, Kendra was cornered. Imani laid out the options in a stark, brutal meeting. Option A. A federal lawsuit seeking treble damages for willful infringement, which Imani's team estimated at close to $30 million, a figure that would bankrupt her personally and dissolve the company into nothing. Option B. A settlement. Kendra, her face pale and drawn, chose the settlement. The terms were devastating. Consequence 1. The seizure of equity. Kendra was forced to sign over 51% of the equity in Gleam Queen Holdings LLC to Marcus Holloway. Overnight, he became the majority owner and controlling partner of the business built on his stolen invention. The company he now controlled was valued at approximately $8 million. Consequence 2. The back royalties. Gleam Queen was ordered to pay Marcus $2.2 million in punitive back royalties. This figure was calculated based on their own meticulously kept sales records for the Diamond Shield service, with a punitive 22% royalty rate applied due to the willful nature of the infringement. Consequence 3. The liquidation of assets. Kendra did not have $2.2 million in cash. To pay the settlement, she was forced into a fire sale of her life. Her sprawling $1.8 million colonial mansion in Myers Park, with its swimming pool and guest house, was sold in a week for far less than it was worth. Her 2 luxury cars, a cherry red Porsche Taycan valued at $110,000 and a black Range Rover Sport worth $95,000, were seized and sold at auction. After paying the settlement and her own astronomical legal fees, she was left with less than $50,000. She went from being the queen of Charlotte's car wash scene to renting a cramped, 2-bedroom apartment in a rundown complex off Albemarle Road. Consequence 4. The end of an empire. With Marcus in control, the Gleam Queen brand was immediately retired. All 12 locations were temporarily shut down, putting 150 people out of work and sending a shockwave through the local industry. Kendra was stripped of all operational authority, becoming a silent minority partner with no power and no income. Next, the consequences cascaded onto Brianna. Her complicity was proven by the clear financial trail. The $74,000 withdrawal, followed by the $70,000 transfer to Kendra's business account, formed an undeniable link. Consequence 1. Professional ruin. Imani's firm sent a carefully worded letter, along with supporting bank records, to the Ethics and Compliance Board of Brianna's new company. The evidence of her role in financing a business built on stolen intellectual property was a flagrant violation of their corporate governance policies. Within 48 hours, Brianna was called into a meeting with HR and the company's general counsel. She was fired, effective immediately, for conduct unbecoming of a corporate officer. She lost her $225,000 a year salary and a portfolio of unvested stock options that would have been worth over $300,000. Consequence 2. The financial clawback. As part of the settlement to avoid being named in a larger civil fraud case, Brianna was forced to repay Marcus his half of the original savings. But Imani didn't just ask for the $37,000. She calculated its value with 8% compound interest over 3 years, plus punitive damages. The final figure Brianna was ordered to pay was $110,000. Consequence 3. The loss of the house. The only major asset Brianna had left was the house in Ballantyne, the symbol of the life she had built. With no job and a $110,000 judgment against her, she had no choice but to sell it. The housing market had cooled slightly, and after paying off the remaining mortgage, the capital gains tax, and Marcus's settlement, she walked away with almost nothing. The beautiful home she had stolen was gone. Consequence 4. Social exile. The story, expertly leaked by Imani's paralegal, was picked up by the Charlotte Business Journal. The article, titled "Gleam Queen Empire Tarnished by Patent Scandal," didn't name names explicitly, but the details were specific enough that anyone in their social or professional circle knew exactly who it was about. Her reputation was obliterated. The friends who had once admired her ambition now whispered about her greed. Throughout this process, Marcus's phone became a repository of Brianna's unraveling. He never answered, but he listened to the voicemails. They formed a perfect 5-act play of desperation. Voicemail 1, anger. "Marcus, what the hell is this? You think you can just come out of nowhere with some fake patent and destroy my sister's life? Call me back, now. You have no idea who you're messing with." Voicemail 2, denial. "Okay, I spoke to my lawyer. This is all a misunderstanding. That formula? Kendra developed it herself. You're just bitter, because I left you. This is pathetic." Voicemail 3, bargaining. "Marcus, please, call me. We can talk about this. There's no need for lawyers. What do you want? Money? I can give you money. Just call off the auditors. You're hurting people." Voicemail 4, fear. Sound of quiet sobbing. "They fired me, Marcus. They fired me. My career is over. Everything I worked for, it's gone. How could you do this? After everything we had?" Voicemail 5, surrender. A long silence, then a broken whisper. "You were right. I took the money. I gave it to her. We used your formula. I know we did. I'm sorry. Oh God, Marcus, I'm so sorry. Please, just make it stop." He listened to the last message, his face impassive. He felt a flicker of something, not pity, not satisfaction, just a deep, weary sadness for the person she had become. Then he pressed delete. The ledger was balanced. The debt was paid. 2 years later, the Charlotte sun shone brightly, casting long shadows across the freshly paved asphalt of a corner lot in the Belmont neighborhood. The air smelled of new paint, curing concrete, and opportunity. Marcus, now 44, stood in the open bay of a newly renovated garage, a brick building with a history that stretched back to the 1950s. He'd bought the property, a derelict auto shop, where he'd first learned to change oil as a teenager for $600,000 cash. It was now the world headquarters of Aegis Applied Sciences. He was wearing a simple gray $40 Carhartt t-shirt, faded jeans, and a pair of well-worn $150 work boots. His hands, though clean, bore the permanent faint stains of grease and polish, a cartography of his life's work. He had no interest in running a car wash empire. After the settlement, he had methodically liquidated the assets of Gleam Queen. He sold the leases and equipment for the 12 locations to a national competitor for a neat $4.1 million. He kept the one thing that had ever mattered, the intellectual property, Aegis. His company didn't detail cars anymore. It licensed his patented formulas, He now had 3 to manufacturers and high-end detailer networks across the globe. His net worth on paper was north of $6 million, a number that still felt abstract and slightly absurd. His true wealth was here, in this garage. He'd invested over $1 million into turning it into a state-of-the-art training and R&D facility. He spent his days not counting money, but teaching. He had started a mentorship program taking on young, ambitious black men and women from the neighborhood, teaching them the craft of detailing, but more importantly, the business of it. He taught them about chemistry, about marketing, about client relations, and about protecting their own ideas. One afternoon, his assistant told him he had a visitor. He walked to the front office to find Brianna standing there. He hadn't seen her in 5 years. The Armani gowns and Cartier watches were gone. She wore a simple dress from a department store, and her hair was pulled back without any particular style. She looked tired, but the frantic desperation was gone, replaced by a quiet resignation. She was working, he'd heard, as a junior marketing coordinator for a small nonprofit, making around $50,000 a year. "Marcus," she said, her voice soft, "thank you for seeing me." "Brianna?" He nodded, keeping his distance. "This place is amazing," she said, looking around. "You built this." "I did," he said. There was a long, awkward silence. Then she looked him in the eye. "I didn't come here to ask for anything," she said. I needed to say I'm sorry, face to face, with no lawyers and no agenda. What I did to you was unforgivable. It wasn't just the money. I took your dream, and I tried to crush your spirit because I was ashamed that it was better than mine. I was arrogant and cruel, and I have spent the last 2 years living with the consequences of that. I am truly, deeply sorry." He listened to the words. He saw the sincerity in her eyes, a humility that had been forged in the fires of her own downfall. The rage he had carried for so long was gone, replaced by a profound sense of peace. He had already forgiven her long ago, not for her sake, but for his. Holding on to that anger was like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. "I accept your apology, Brianna," he said, and he meant it. "I hope you find what you're looking for." She gave a small, sad smile and nodded. "Thank you," she whispered, and then she turned and walked away. He watched her go, feeling not triumph, but a quiet, bittersweet closure. Later that day, he was in his office, a simple room overlooking the training bay. Taped to the wall above his desk was the original yellow sticky note. He looked at it one last time. "This is your share." She thought she was defining his worth, leaving him with what she believed he deserved. But she was wrong. The $40 wasn't his value. It was his catalyst. It was the starting block. She had stripped him of everything but his own 2 hands, the knowledge in his head, and the resilience in his heart. And it turned out that was more than enough. True wealth was never about the balance in a bank account. It's about what you can build from nothing. It's the sweat on your brow, the idea that won't let you sleep, and the stubborn refusal to let anyone else write the final chapter of your story. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find out what you truly have. What do you think is the most important thing to have when starting over? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to Love Beyond Pride for more stories of justice and new beginnings.